And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
The magic might have been inside of us all along.
Are you serious? Yeah. I told you, Michelle, I love you. I'll do anything for you.
Ryan Quinn Flanagan. He cleared his throat with bulldozers. Had the necessary work permit from the city taped to the side of his face. Removing dirt from the windpipe, he found trapped miners that had died down there, their once blackened faces now skeletal, huddled together like an American football team discussing a play that never happened. But lest you think my mud brain's hung up on simple excavation, there's still the clouded mind to address. Always clouded, with a thick haze of grievous confusion, the benchmark of basic clarity never met, sitting in dark cafes with stupid French names, folding the newspapers like losing a hand of poker. Greetings and welcome to the Social Yet Distance podcast. My name is Jack, and today we've got a great show with Ryan Quinn Flanagan, and we're going to go ahead and get the boring everybody hates bio stuff out of the way, and we'll come back and talk to Ryan in just a few minutes. Ryan Quinn Flanagan is a Canadian-born author residing in Elliot Lake, Ontario, Canada, with his wife and many mounds of snow. His work can be found in both print and online in such places as Evergreen Review, Punk Noir Magazine, The New York Quarterly, Cultural Weekly, Gutter Eloquence, The Dope Fiend Daily, and Rye Whiskey Review. He's a Canadian-based writer, published in print online. He is the author of 26 collections of poetry, including 3 chapbooks and 4 collaborations, and twice has been nominated for Pushcart Prize, and he's a Best of the Net finalist. Originally born in Barrie, Ontario, he moved to Kingston at the age of 23 to attend Queen's University, and he holds both a BA and an MA in history with an English minor. Presently, his time is devoted to writing as often as he can, and as well as doing other day-to-day things that people do in order to pay the bills. He particularly has an affinity for dragonflies, discount tequila, and all things sarcastic. We want to thank you for being here today, and we'll talk to Ryan in just a few minutes. Thanks. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Social Yet Distance podcast. My name is Jack, and today we've got a really special event. My compadre Fran in the UK is here with us, and we're going to talk today with Ryan Quinn Flanagan about his newest book and his history in writing and all kind of interesting topics for discussion. So let me say hello, Fran. Good to see you. I hope you're well.
Oi, oi. How are you doing?
And Manny the dog is all better and everything's good there. So that's good news.
Yeah, you'll probably hear
How are you,
him.
my friend? It's a pleasure to see you.
You too, yeah. Manny will probably join in at some point. We'll probably have an extemporized kind of like...
He knows he's welcome.
Yeah.
And Ryan Quinn Flanagan, how are you, my friend? It's good to see you. Let's talk books and poems and whatever. You want to just, you want to jump right in and give us something... go ahead and read us something. Give us a little introduction into who Ryan Quinn Flanagan is.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I'll start off. I'll read a few from a chapbook I did called Night Spotting with Tom Bakeless. It's Between Shadows Press out of New Jersey.
Good old Tom.
Yeah, he's a good guy. And
Tom, if you're listening, you owe me, dude. Come on, call me, bud. It's your turn. Quit working so hard. Come hang out.
And
all right, brother. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. The first poem is the title poem, Night Spotting. It is not far. It is not too far. I could almost see it sitting here like a paperweight. Imagine it with a brain only too willing to magnolia paint a picture. Folds, functions, neurons firing. Scared fireworks to keep matted dogs scurrying under bed. Old glass panes that no longer hold their heat. I come close. I have come close. I can certainly feel something standing here in the reverb. A boneless, skinless squall that leaps and churns and gallivants. I have sailed by so often that strangers will name ships after me.
Yes.
All right.
You do your last lines like me, man. They always kind of leave you hanging a little bit and thinking. I like that a lot.
On the lines, yeah. Yeah. This one's funnier piece, I guess. It's called Sloppy Jalopy. So, he would never admit that he drove around all night looking for the right one, that he pulled up to the curb and chatted the girls up, his wedding band tucked into his sock like a pro, that he met this latest one outside an impound lot. I started calling her Sloppy Jalopy just to piss him off, insinuating that he may have had too much to drink, that Sloppy Jalopy may have been a tranny, had an Adam's apple large as the sun. He got very angry, started defending her as though she were his wife. Not that he had any problems with, quote, those people. I laughed and poured another drink, asked about his missing wedding band. He seemed to be losing on many fronts. Shit, he said, taking the thing back out of his sock and putting it on his finger. I could see the panic on his face, like this wasn't the first time. I'd hate to be your wife, I said. I'd hate to be your husband, he responded. He had me there. No one would want to be my husband, not even Sloppy Jalopy, the best blowy in the entire impound yard. I hope you don't plan to sell her for scrap, I prodded. He knew exactly who I was talking about, as though I had been right there in the car with them the entire time. How he drove to the place she suggested, the money up front, and then down to business.
Yeah, man. It's like short bursts of detail to me, the way your stuff reads. And, you know, I tend to do a little research. I mean, you and I've kind of followed you around the web, and we've been seeing each other around for years. And, you know, I just never dug in and bought a book or, you know, pursued your trail. And in doing the research, I'm just blown away. I mean, I know people who are extremely prolific, like Fran, for example, and even the amount of work that you put out and made available in the public just blew me away. I had no idea. And then I looked at not only the books, but just the submissions and the different places where you've been published and the quality of those locations since, I mean, like 2010, just stellar magazines or rags or journals or whatever you want to call them, whatever they are, just one behind the other. And that's just amazing to me. So the question really I'm looking for here is, you know, how does that arc happen for you? Because I know the amount of work that's required to get to that level of visibility within a community that appreciates what you're doing. And so, you know, I struggle with how I kind of perceive you as a person who was kind of always there, but I didn't know all this stuff about you. And that's a puzzle to me. And I don't really know what it is. And I wonder if there's something in your arc of growth that changed, that made you more visible and open.
Yeah, when I started, like you said, it was way back, like probably even early Sleaze Trash days would be about 2008 or so, and it was back in the old days. There wasn't still a lot of the submissions were really early. It was still mailouts, and you know, you had to get all the addresses of all the places and get all the stamps and the self-addressed envelopes and everything. and got very expensive and timely. But the good thing is the technology caught up, and I guess that's probably why it became more visible. Is more of the submissions and stuff was online, and the venues too. That became more acceptable. I think there was a stigma at the start that it wasn't the same
Right.
as like print journals or. And then even if you would just mail, if it was still mail, they thought that was better than if you just sent it through email. And of course, that's obliterated now. But so I think that's probably more the visibility. I was always doing it, but it was just through mail, basically. And then when that switched, then it was about half and half for, I guess, 2009, 2011, something like that. And then after that, about 2012 and on, it really started going online. Most of it, and there's still some print here, like in Canada. There's a lot of university stuff, but
and back in those days, I mean, even the thought of doing anything digital was almost taboo, and don't even think about mentioning ebook, or ebook alone.
That's another one.
I mean, Kindle was kind of brand new. I mean, back then, I wouldn't say brand new, but new enough, and the technology wasn't as accepted as it is now. I've got 600 books on my phone, that I may or may not ever read, but the Gutenberg Project's a pretty cool thing, and so, I've got access to stuff that I would have never, ever had, and that's a cool.
Yeah, that's the thing for me too, is like being where I am, I'm quite geographically isolated. So when this opened up online as well, it introduced me to all kinds of writers, artists, publishers, editors, graphic artists, everybody that you wouldn't normally meet. So like artists from all over the world now, and you talk to them. We've exchanged books and talked, and these people, follow them through podcasts like yours, of course, and you get to know these people, and you'd never have a chance to do that with the old system the way it was. So I guess that's probably much more visibility, certainly for a writing community, is that the people have access to each other now, no matter where you are, like, friends over in Britain, but we can sit here now.
Right. Well, and I know,
we really
Fran,
couldn't do that.
I mean, we've kind of walked down that path in your career too. I've been kind of next to you as you kind of go through as well. And I remember Fran when she was extremely resistant to even putting anything online, even, so, I mean, what do you think about all this?
I think the Dead Tree Press died hard, but I also think, I mean, my resistance wasn't a snobbery about technology. It was more, like not wanting to be visible myself, which I've just had to learn to live with that now. You just are. You Google me and there are like 1,000 photos of me and one of Simon Armitage for some random reason. But like it happens, and eventually you just have to resign your fucking self to that fact, and it's fine. And actually nobody's looking. It's there, but 90% of the time nobody cares. They'll care about the work briefly. I want to ask Ryan, like with regards to the internet and like your productivity, is it a case that the technology has finally caught up with your insane prolific energy, or is it more that the kind of like, I don't know, like the instantaneousness of all this technology is kind of driving you to do more, do you think? Is it kind of like inspiring you and pushing you to work harder? All right.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both. Like I would always write all along, but I was definitely not on the same amount of submissions. One, it just wasn't cost effective with the old mail system. But the submissions obviously take a lot of time, as we all know, and going through and all these things. But that's part of it. That's what you got to do, and other things like that. But I was always doing the writing. But then I think when it changed more with the online stuff, you allowed a lot more of it to become visible, just putting it out online, and you saw other people doing the same, and then that it kind of spurs you on as well too, that you can see other people doing it. So you just keep working hard and putting more stuff out, and they put more stuff out, and you kind of feed off each other, and that wasn't there before. So I think that probably just added to it as well.
Yeah, that's a kind of perpetual motion machine, right? Sorry, Jack.
That's okay. I think that tapping into that energy, like you said, is definitely a good thing. But I wonder what your opinion might be of the downside, because I have very definitive ideas about how closed in that community became. I mean, I remember those early days too, and stupid poetic politics and Facebook fights and magazines closing down and everybody acting like a bitch half the time, you know, over their ego. And nobody was really qualified to have that position or take that stance, really. I mean, very few, you know. And so, but I think that that's rolled into my ultimate theory about the podcast and everything social yet distance, is that we've built a very tight knit, close community, but we've limited ourselves because our work doesn't get out to anybody but those people, because nobody's promoting it anywhere else. Obviously, you're a little bit different than that, because when I do an Amazon search for your name, look at what happens. So I see you're probably doing something differently, you know. You know, some of those other prolific people, you might find 1 out of every 10 books they write on Amazon, you know, or so you're doing something different. I'm curious if you've tapped into what that is or how you feel about that closed in community view that I'm taking.
Yeah, it was definitely like that at the start, for sure. Like it was kind of weird because when the old press system was dying, it was like everybody got excited, and then they formed their own new clique and just became the old system again, and tried to close people out, and then you had counter arguments and counter cliques and ridiculousness. And I mean, it still goes on, of course, to a degree, but it was worse.
It's quiet
early on. And with the Amazon thing, it's funny. You kind of you find weird venues like I have like with the Huffington Post interview, right? The columnist is a friend of mine, so we met through Sleaze Trash a long time ago, and you know, that's how that came about. But I mean, there's other stuff like you can't even imagine, where you're just doing the same thing everyone else is doing, and then you'll check in something and you'll see that somebody in the States has your poem on a syllabus, or a school play has reenacted your poem for a talent show in the States somewhere, right? Or weird things that you would never even think of. And you know, that has nothing to do with me or anything. That's just weird things that happen. And
it's fucking cool.
It's outside. Oh yeah, I love when that happens. I reached out to the teacher and I said thanks. I wish when I was growing up I had a teacher like you,
right,
who was searching out these things, putting these things on syllabus, and introducing people to poetry young. And you know, I didn't have that, and I told them, keep doing that. That's great. But that's outside the community. But not a lot happens. It does get pretty insular, and you know, you look for those things where it's outside the community as well.
I'm laughing because based on our discussion earlier, I just got a Facebook notification from the place in Fort Walton.
That's cool.
Gods are good today, apparently. I mean, I'm with you on all that, 100%. I think that those politic things still happen. I think it's gotten a lot quieter. And I don't think I've submitted a poem anywhere in 5 years. And it's because I found the system itself just incredibly non-productive. Nothing that went through that system worked. And, you know, when I was working, like you said, the Huffington Post thing, I mean, I worked for the Good Men Project, and, you know, that's a completely different thing. But when you say you do things to earn money, you know, that's what I'm picturing is you know, doing your creative stuff, but then taking a half an hour to write a 800-word article real quick and make $40 real quick because Huffington Post or Good Men Project or somebody needs you to write a piece about this or that, you know. And you know, and so people like that teacher or like that friend of yours at Huffington Post, that's how you build that community as well. And those people, that's kind of my point. They would buy your book if they knew it was out there.
Yeah.
You know,
but it just doesn't, it usually doesn't percolate out too much outside of the writing community, right? Like we all know about each other, pretty much. But others don't really know that, and I guess I don't know about the number, but it was like in America, what is it, 1% after high school read a book or whatever, a year,
it's not
whatever
even
it is,
poetry, just a book.
Yeah, that's a book at all. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's just when you think about that, right, it's just horrifying. So when you get into
discussion we've had for years about the difference in the way that things are taught where she is versus here. It's like don't. I mean, when I was in school, you just didn't learn about poetry. It was like how do you diagram a sentence and not learn about racism? That's it. Pretty much. And I'm in Georgia. So it was quite the task.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything like that. Like I said, no exposure to poetry or anything.
Right.
Even through, I guess there was probably one teacher even in high school. Besides that, it wasn't really like that. But one teacher in high school would do it. And then I heard you talking on a past podcast about Dante or whatever. And I know at the end of high school, I got into Dante. So I did a presentation on Dante's Inferno for the class or whatever. And but it was funny because I couldn't get the book at the school. And she warned me about this. She's like, this is more university type. If we don't have that book, so I had to go get it somewhere else. And I just really enjoyed the idea of Dante, how he set it all up. Plus, all the ego of putting the Pope in hell. I mean, that was kind of ballsy. But I just love that. At that time. But we didn't really have anything like that, and poetry was just not taught at all. There was no exposure. I guess is it different?
I started digging into reading too, and I wasn't learning anything like that at school. When I started reading, I picked up things like Hermann Hesse and Dostoevsky and Sartre, and just this. Geez, no wonder my head exploded when I was like 12 years old. It's like I'm reading this stuff and actually understanding it, and wonder why I'm bored at school later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get, over here, you get the literature, but you also get the hidden curriculum that tells working class kids that this is not for you, So although we had, it's there and it was presented to us, but I was never one of the kids who was asked to, join the poetry school, to join the society. We're given like physical activities to knacker us out so we don't start trouble. That's what you can do. You can do gym, or you can do fucking football, or you can do track. You can't do poetry. It's not for you. Fuck off. And so, but we were lucky. I mean, back in those days, you could go to the library, and if you were determined enough and you had like a kind of badass mother like I had, who was kind of, sort of radical feminist communist, be like, we're going to the library because, education is your birthright and your inheritance as a working class person. So that was great. I mean, you can't, for kids now in England, the Tories have closed all the libraries, so we can't do that anymore. There's not that option, doesn't exist now. You get what you're given at school, and they just made poetry optional at GCSE level, so kids now have a choice not to encounter any poetry at all. And because they're told that it's boring, and because they make the teaching of poetry boring, it sucks the life out of it. So there's a whole generation of kids who think poetry isn't for them, and it's sad. It's so sad.
Yep.
Yeah, I just hope that this altruistic mission that I consider myself to be on, of spreading the gospel of poetry, actually has some impact. Because, and like I've said on several of the podcasts, there's this girl named Mary Sue who lives in Birmingham, Alabama somewhere, and she doesn't really know that there's a line in Ryan Quinn Flanagan's poem that could change her life. And she might not ever know that book exists because we're not doing our job in preaching that gospel. And we do it because we're comfy, cozy in our little community, that ultimately there might be spats, but we're going to back each other up in the end. And as long as we're sticking pure to whatever this invisible ideal is that we cater to.
Yeah.
And I just think it's our responsibility to carry that message a little bit further and expose somebody who might, whether it's in the UK or whether it's here, as some sort of political tool or just an education, it doesn't really matter. if you don't know it's there, you don't get that chance. And I think that's what's important, really, to me.
For sure.
You know?
I know where I grew up, it was a total jock town, like not just in the high school system, but everything was, of course, it's Canada, so hockey was one, but football was the main one for the school. But some of our teachers were even coaches on the hockey team with corporate sponsorship, and they would bring over players from Russia, and they had what we called them puck bunnies to do their homework for them.
Wow.
So they could keep their grades up and they could get into the OHL and have a chance at the NHL, and the whole farm system was there. That's what the school was.
Right.
And so certainly no poetry, as you can tell. It was just sports, like Fran was saying. And if you didn't do that, then, certainly I had the one teacher where I came across W.H. Auden and Wilfred Owen's work, and I absolutely loved it. But besides that, we had no poetry class, no introduction to it. Of course, you're told it's boring. And we even had a 3-tier system in the high school at the time that you could go through the advanced system, or the general education, or the kids they decided in first year that went through basic, and they would stick you in shop to work on cars.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you didn't even take English classes in general. And they would just do your tier system and churn them right out of the school like that with the farm system for the sports. And that's how it was set up. So
back to the mines.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Stay in your lane, prole. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's like,
I bet you have a poem about that somewhere, don't you, Ryan? Or at least on something.
Oh, I'm sure I do somewhere. I don't have one. I don't have it with me, but I have plenty
whatever
of
you want, buddy. We're game.
All right. I'll read a few from this one's from Marathon Books. It's Tripwire for the Soul.
I love the name.
Thanks. And my wife did the cover, actually. She's very talented with that. So
I did not know that, but I was going to ask because it is quite attractive, and we'll make sure that that's quite prominent in all of our further promotions.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's very talented with creative stuff like that, which I'm not. So that's awesome. First one I'll read is called Jolly Rancher. It's not you guys probably remember the candy Jolly Rancher or whatever, but it's not about that. It's actually Old Rancher. But anyway, I guess all his ranch hands were working out. Seasonal hires from the city. Paid as well as one can hope, surrounded by desolate fields and the ever-present smell of manure. At this dude ranch with a name no one could remember, even some of the older ones that had spent many seasons there. But the rancher made this stew. His wife had taught him how to cook a little before her demise. Laid to rest in the family plot in back, with the child she died giving birth to, a boy named William. This jolly rancher taking everything in stride, grabbing his guitar each night so he could sit by the grave and play his wife's favorite songs. Then up and at him again, cracking jokes before first light. A couple boiling pots of coffee, every bit as farm strong as all the young men who gathered around with cup in hand.
I really like that, and I was just sitting here listening, and Fran, I want you to check me on this one. But, a lot of people write from the perspective when they read, it sounds like they're reading with their own voice internally. Yeah. And I was listening to you read that, and it sounds like more like you're an observer, just giving one-line sentences of what just happened. And it's like they pair together with a detail, pair together in a detail. I noticed that rhythm there, and looking at some of your other work, it's kind of the same. It's like an external voice talking, describing something, as opposed to me saying something out there, putting something out there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's often what I see. It's like kind of like a detached voice from outside, like you said, an external thing. I don't really internalize it too much, or there's not a lot of over emotion,
right,
in it. Like there are certain emotional things or personal things, but the voice itself doesn't really say it. We just kind of come at it from a more external way. That's the way
it exactly. The voice doesn't say it, but you feel it. You know it's there.
Yeah.
It's very. I was just going to say that I think that it's extremely attentive and observational to the other. There's a kind of observational intensity to it. Like you've really looked at things and you've really kind of like you've really nailed down the thing that's in front of you and the thing that you. And I was thinking about, you know, how rare that is in contemporary poetry, particularly contemporary lyric, which is super ego invested, like hugely. And I kind of wonder how much, like, if this is a style that is kind of like natural and native to you, or is it something that you've kind of worked at in more kind of like self-conscious, almost like a kind of political gesture, like against that sort of horrible ego-driven lyric eye, you know?
Jack, I was it's a bit of both. I was aware. I was aware of that type of voice when doing it, but I wasn't doing any conscious thing really against it. This is the way I naturally talk, so that's kind of the way I go at it. And you're totally right about observation when writing about anything, like if it could be a poem about a toilet brush, but you're going to sit there and analyze the toilet brush and find the smallest details on it, and really it's not about any ego or any personal voice thing. It's just about capturing details and maybe some other side observations in it as well, but it's never really personal, right? It's just observational, highly observational actually. But that's the way I approach it.
Yeah.
It's like the periphery is there, but you've really honed in on the detail part, and it just kind of, that part flows out. And I feel like there's an atmosphere around all the words, you know, and that's that observational quality, I think, that you guys are calling it.
I don't think it's always necessary to, like, sometimes you can, but I don't think it's always necessary to point out all the atmosphere or all the things, right? Like you should let your readership or people read into things they want to or see or not see, because, you know, it is a give and take regardless of what people think, right? It's not just meant to be a soapbox. So you know, so you kind of leave some of that atmosphere there and people can interpret what they want or not, you know. But that's kind of how I approach it. But
I was talking to somebody yesterday about the status of my current writing, and that's the thing, is it's like I'm stuck in this one voice, and I'm aware that I need to be out of it, and I'm trying, you know, to do that. But it's become monotonous and it hurts my ears, you know. Seriously, I mean, to a certain degree, it's like, no, dude, you've grown past this. And, you know, and I'm still in my head, I'm struggling with the idea of metaphor. You know, how do I say this without actually saying it? You know?
These are tough questions, though, that you have to deal with when you're writing, right? You got to consider the voice. I found one that was helpful was to animate objects that don't have you know, that aren't really living. So like I'll do it from the view of a toilet brush then, right? And then that way the voice has to be somewhat different because I don't have the voice of a toilet brush. You know, I'll just pick some inanimate object and try to give it life or give it its own backstory. But then, you know, even if it's your own voice, to a degree, it has to be different just because it's so far removed from you.
Right.
And then that I use that tactic a bit for when you get stuck like that. Besides that, I don't know many other tactics, but these are things that every writer has to deal with. You have to consider.
See, I mean, you say that, and I have this vision of like mega brush, you know, dressed as Superman, going from toilet to toilet. You know, I've got this whole backstory going on in my head. It's like, wait a minute, dude, how come you can't capture that shit when you're trying to write? You know.
So funny. It's hard now, though, right? I mean, I think, you know, thinking about what you were saying about, you know, sort of attending to the world and thinking yourself into inanimate objects or sort of other kind of just subject positions. I think that because we've all been trapped, I mean, you were speaking about already being isolated, you're kind of isolated geographically, and we're all kind of isolated indoors. And I think, Jack, we live in our own heads, right, as well. And so you're trapped in there, and the voice that comes out on the page is often a version of the voice that is just cycling around in your head all day. Exactly. And it's extremely difficult to break away from that. And it's also like, the world is such now, it's gone to such shit that it's almost impossible to find, to be able to write through it. And I don't know if you feel, Ryan, that like the answer to that problem is just to focus on the really kind of everyday things or these neglected things, if that's in some way an answer to how we even, how we write politics now, because that you can approach it in its own language, which is super grandiose and, over the top and attacking. And
that's exactly the way that I've come to see it, or how I've decided to approach it, is that you just kind of have to go kind of internalize again to yourself, to the mundane, to the everyday, to things that aren't really spoken about. And then you can put those ideas, you can insert those ideas into those things within the poems. But like you said, it's a way of trying to get around the world that we're dealing with right now, and the language and the barriers. And you have to find a new way to do that. But that's definitely the way I chose, is what you just described. Yeah. And that was the only way forward that I could see, for me at least. And that's definitely the one I ran with. So
it works. It really works.
Thank you.
It works for you anyway. I think I just do this one strident monologue. If you just imagine like Sinead O'Connor mid-1990s just yelling angrily whilst tearing up pictures of the Pope. That's my poetic voice. That's the only one I've got.
That kind of describes it, Fran. You said that line, I can tell. You've been waiting to use that one, hadn't you?
Yeah, that's my new author bio. That's all it says. Yeah,
that's the author bio.
Itinerant dog walker no more. I'm Sinead O'Connor in the 90s with a picture of the Pope.
on repeat forever. That's it. That's all it is.
Yeah. Cycle.
And I clear my throat with a fucking bulldozer.
Yeah, that's an amazing line. That's an amazing line.
Well, I think it gets back to what I was originally rambling about, in that, finding the audience for that voice. I mean, there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And I feel like sometimes a lot of that effort goes wasted if the goal is anything other than to just kind of vomit it out, and I have a background where I did some sales and things like that. And one of the things that you learn is that you got to talk to people in a voice that they understand. And so not everybody's going to like my stuff, and they're not going to understand it, and they might have to figure it out. But the next guy might read it and it might smack them right between the eyes. And it's like anything else. If I've been given a gift and I'm going to pass it on to the world, it's not really my business what happens to it, Where I get trapped is I know the stories that incited me writing that piece. And I know the visual details and the history and everything that goes along with it. So when I read it through that lens, and I relive the moments and the ideas. Well, you guys can't read it that way. It's not conceivable. So where my area is, I need to learn how to read it as well, and understand that I'm not just, that I need to hear it in a voice other than my own, because somebody else that's the important part. I've done my part by getting it out,
Yeah, that is the hard part, right? Like once you've done it, like you said, it's hard to escape your voice, because of course you're going to write it. It's your experience, it's your voice,
right?
And it's often something very personal, so it's hard to escape that. But once you put it out there, most people are going to come at it from a completely different way. They don't have that experience directly. They don't know. It's shared to a degree, but it can't be a complete shared experience, of course. And they'll have their own voice, and like kind of when you put it online or put it out anywhere, it kind of gets a life of its own, and people are going to do with it what they will. That's just the way it is now.
Right.
But
that's
the hardest part with the voice is that once you've put it out there, your voice is kind of gone from it, except in your head it's still not, because it's still with you, right? But
right, ultimately it's none of my business what happens to it, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else, you know. I use the example, I gave away my last dollar bill one time to a guy, you know, and you know, somebody's like, well, why would you do that? He's going to just buy a beer with it. And I'm like, yeah, but it could be the last beer he ever drinks. It could be the beer that keeps him from overdosing on cocaine, you know, or I mean, it's not my business. You know, the dude needed $1 and I had one. You know, I got a poem too, and you guys can do whatever you want with it, you know. I mean, it needs to be the same way for me.
And we're often not even the best judge of the things. Like, you get too close to the work in a way.
Right.
I noticed it through not the work itself, but through submissions. Is often, say, you know, you do a certain number of poems and you'll put some poems at the start that you think, oh, well, I think I've read their you know, other poets here and this and that, and I think this would kind of fit best.
Right.
And then this wouldn't quite fit as well. And I'm almost always wrong. It's always like, we'll take this poem and it's like, you know, the one at the end or this or that. I'm like never right, the worst judge of character on that. But it goes to the way they see it or their voice, right? It's totally different than yours.
Right.
And how once you put the work out there, it's quite different than the way you view it. Apparently I view it incorrectly a lot of the time for
well, and I think that just like everything else in my world, I have to learn to detach from that and just not care, you know?
Yeah.
Just do the work and just don't care about what the outcome's going to be, because it's going to be whatever it is. And I end up pissed off or my feelings get hurt or whatever, because I have some expectation that's not realistic to begin with, you know?
Well, the main thing for you is that you get the work out, right? That's
right.
That's the main thing. Express yourself and get the work out, and that's your personal reward, I guess. And then obviously you would like some reception when you put it out there, but when you do put it out there, it really just goes out there now.
Well,
and
you know, my goal, I mean, there's alternative motives as well. I mean, I want the podcast to grow and I want to spread the gospel of poetry. And if I'm out there, I get to meet people like you, and, you know, it forces my hand in those arenas where I might be weak as well. So, I mean, it's all a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts for me about putting the work out there was the feedback, but also the people that came back or that you met, because naturally I'm quite introverted most of the time, and you would meet these people in a way that you never could before by putting the work out there, and then they would come back and then you'd connect with their work or podcasts or anything. Or like I know so many really cool graphic artists now, just amazing artists all over the world, and I would have never met them. And they've done some cover work, and some you want to do work with them in future. But you know, these are people I'm introverted. I would have never reached out to them probably in daily life, or even if I knew them. But social media has allowed that possibility where we can kind of open up a bit, you know.
Yeah. What do you think, Fran?
You know what I think about it? So yeah, I totally agree. Well, totally agreeing with everything you're saying. Social media still gives me the kind of like, yeah, it just gives me the bullies. I'm more kind of a hiding in the basement kind of a person. But I mean, I also hate that about myself. I think my poetry, you know, I take it out. I find my most rewarding experiences are when, you know, it goes into the world, and I have to remind myself of that. And, you know, I think the nicest thing that ever happened to me at a reading was I read this really long poem about Belfast and about the troubles in Northern Ireland, and, you know, just living in a shitty working class area in Northern Ireland. And I read this poem, and at the end of the evening, I was leaving, and this great big bald skinhead guy, I mean, he looked like a poster boy for loyalist violence, yelled at me from down the end of the road and come charging up towards me. And I really thought he was going to like chin me and drop me in the middle of the street, but he didn't. He hugged me. And that's he said, awesome. you just said what I've always felt, and I didn't have words for. And it just like, and that's what happens when your poetry goes out there. And it's not like, and then I have to remind myself that it's for that guy that it exists. It doesn't exist for, you know, the snooty editors of journals who keep you hanging for like a year and a half, or, you know, I'm still on that, Jack.
Like, I'm sure, yeah, I would be too.
That's the best result, though. That's the best thing right there, right? That's I mean, that's priceless.
Yeah, that was like a hug across the barricades, you know, in the middle of a street in shitty London. And it was just that's what it's for. And
it shows you too that people can surprise you sometimes, like what you expected to happen and what actually happened, right? It's that there are people out there, they're looking. It's hard to find though,
Well, and it in these circles, it's so easy to mislead yourself. I mean, look at somebody like Scott Young, his whole cowboy persona. All right. Well, if you were to like just read about him and not really know anything about him or know his work or what he's done in the poetry world, you would think, oh, this dude's a school teacher. He's an old country boy, just a great guy, No, but that dude's got tales, man, serious tales, and he's all about the poetry and he's all about the love and he's all, I mean, you know what the guy's like. I mean, he's something.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be the furthest thing that you might imagine, if you just kind of see him on paper,
Yep.
And like personally, I'm impacted by this guy, not just because I've been reading his work for years, but because this is a real fucking human who goes to work every day with the intention of helping to save a child's life who may not stand a fucking chance if there's not somebody like him around.
Yep.
You don't get no better than that. There is nothing more poetry than that ever,
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. And I would have never met him if it hadn't been, for this and a little bit of social media and paying attention and, saying, hey man, you don't know me, Scott, but I'm always been here, dude. Let's talk about your book.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that's the greatest thing that comes out of it is those relationships, meeting people like that. You learn what they do, as human beings, and how many good human beings there are out there doing things.
Right.
That's a great reward out of it.
Well, and in these times, people making use of the technology to stay connected it sets an example as well. I mean, besides the obvious rewards. Those people on Facebook who zip past something that says, live poetry event, who would have never seen it, because there's some Zoom event going on out there they never knew was there. That's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's a melding of the worlds, not a competition. You have to talk to people in the voice they hear. And if they're out there in social media and I want to spread the gospel, I got to be there.
Yeah. I
So,
feel like that's me told now. I feel like I've been told off, right?
No, I'm your poetic pimp. I take care of all that stuff. You just write, Fran. You just keep writing, baby. That's all I care about. I will ride your career till it's gone, baby. But that does bring up something I like to talk about, though. I mean, I know a little bit about Fran's history, but I'd like to hear from you too, Ryan. Is this idea of mentors? I mean, Fran, from a writing perspective and a personal perspective, has just been more than a mentor could ever be. But I know that we all have people cross our paths who made that difference in encouraging your creative talent. And I'm always curious where that comes from. And then I'll let Fran talk about her mentor, who is basically a god. So.
Yeah, I found there was no like real key mentor writing wise of it. Like there was the one high school teacher said, introduction to things that you would definitely not see, and he also made it cool, where a lot of people don't. And but like personally, mentors, I'm not close with my own family. I'm estranged from my own family, so my mentors growing up were my grandfathers,
right?
Because I could look to them, where I couldn't look to my own father or mother, and but they weren't artistic. I mean, one worked as a bouncer and a bus driver,
right,
and didn't really do, and the other one was auxiliary police officer and a train engineer, but but they taught you how to be a man, a proper man, and do things the right way. And but yeah, as for writing mentors, there wasn't too much. It was just what you came across, and then you just try to do it yourself, I guess, in a way, right? And fumble along, and eventually stumble into what would kind of be your own voice.
Right.
And I actually have a poem about my father, which I guess relates kind of this.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's definitely do that.
Yeah, the anti-mentor poem. It's about my first childhood dog, and it's called Cerberus had 3 heads, my dog has none. My childhood dog was a black lab called Rocky. He came from the pound and brought fleas with him. My father banished him to the backyard, and I was forbidden to play with him. It's a dirty mongrel, my father would say. I won't allow the fleas. Not in this house. I won't allow it. I was allowed to watch him run and jump and roll and scratch from my bedroom window. One day, Rocky dug up a red shoebox buried in the backyard and carried the chew toy he found inside around with pride. He escaped with the chew toy, and neighbors were appalled as he shook it around wildly in his teeth and tried to play fetch. Some neighborhood kids obliged, and that seemed to make it all worse. My father recaptured him when he got home from work, but before he could get the chew toy back, Rocky swallowed it whole. Apparently, I had a brother or sister buried in a red shoebox in the backyard, and my childhood dog ate it. My mother cried, and my father became so enraged that he led my childhood dog out into a field one afternoon and shot it in the head. After that, I was only allowed to have goldfish, and wondered just how many other brothers and sisters I had lying around. So that's my anti-mentor poem.
That's about as anti-mentor as you get. Wow.
I
Wow.
would say well done on that one, boy. You nailed that one.
Yeah. Fuck. We're going to take a minute now or just let that one set.
I'll be editing this and adding like the Jeopardy theme or something to carry us over till we're ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, job well done, my friend. It works, that poem. It works well.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does.
Where did that one come from?
It's also Tripwire for the Soul. It's an older poem that I put in there, but it's poignant because it's the reason why I'm a cat person now. I mean, I haven't had a dog since my only childhood dog, but
I would think, I won't even comment. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I think anything we could add at this point would be, try, right?
You want to talk any about mentors?
I actually want to, rather than doing what I always do, because I always talk about Roddy, and I might talk about Roddy in a bit, but I just kind of like want to ask Ryan about like the idea of mentorship versus community, because I think what we do when we don't have that kind of role model, because like I know that my family weren't artistic in any way either. Political, yes. Mad as a box of spoons, yes. Artistic, no. And I also had, I had great role models in my grandfather and in my uncles, but not so much apart from my mom and my immediate family. And I wonder if actually I think that kind of informs the way that you write, because you're not copying someone else's style or somebody else isn't imposing on you. You've learned how to be a human before you become a poet. Maybe this is the thing I tell myself to make myself feel better. I don't know if you have any kind of views on that, whether, you think that you kind of find your own community and you make your own sort of mentors from whatever is around you, and the poetry happens elsewhere,
Yeah, totally. That's the way that I came at it. Was there was no, similar to you, there was no real artistic mentors or anything like that. So you would look for mentors in other ways, and I'd find my grandfather's another one in the family. He was ostracized from the family, was my Uncle Larry, and he was known in town. He was the only homeless man in town. Wow. Where we grew up. So I would see him about, and I wouldn't know who it was. And I know one time my parents almost ran him over, at an intersection. They slammed on the brakes, and then all I knew, me and my little brother were in the back, and my father said, "Oh, you should have run him over. You just met your Uncle Larry, the bum." And but I always looked up to him because he seemed so strange to me, but he seemed so self-sufficient, and he didn't listen to anybody. And apparently, like, my father was telling me horror stories, but it sounded cool to me, right? It's like, oh, he sleeps outside, he has nowhere to live, and he just goes to the library and reads all the books, but he doesn't do anything.
That's great.
I figure that was the most artistic guy, so I always looked up to him, which pissed my father off, of course, and maybe another reason to do it. But like, so much so that when he passed away, the public library in my hometown now has a bench out front, a commemorative bench for the reader, for the homeless man, and it's my Uncle Larry's bench. But that would be a definite mentor, and I would just see him around town. Even when I was older, I'd see him. He'd get free haircuts. People knew him around town, and I just follow him sometimes. And I could even see my wife laughed. She said he has the Flanagan walk. I walk the same as him. You could see the walk, right?
That's amazing.
So it's like you said. It's coming at it to learn to be human in your own way. And those lessons from those mentors, and then you kind of carry it over into your art, and you find your own voice that way. But that's kind of how I came to it, was through people like that. And he's probably the most artistic I know, but he didn't. I don't know if he did any art, but I know he just read every book in the library. So
he's just accumulating the knowledge there.
Do you have any idea what put him in that status? Like how he ended up there?
From all my father would say is that he had an argument with my grandfather, and then he left home at 19, and he was homeless till he was about 70 or whatever. He was on the street. But I think it was around the time the youngest son, he drowned down at the waterfront there when he was 9. He was coming home from school, walking home, and I guess he fell in the water, didn't know how to swim, and he drowned. So that kind of made a whole family dynamic. So I think that he left home about then. My grandmother got ECT because she fell apart, and then because of the loss of that, and then the family kind of grew apart after that. But I think it's centered around that time, but I'm not really sure because my father doesn't like to talk about him. Of course, if he does, it's just disparagingly. But
Well, I mean, in picturing the time, I'm thinking of guys that fit that picture, and they were most of them were vets. Vietnam era vets. And so I kind of pictured that as the same time, but any kind of trauma like that makes sense. I mean, something just snaps and you go on your own way to get what you need,
Yeah. I never actually knew my grandmother like as she was before the ECT, because I was so young then. So I always knew her as the quietest person I ever met.
Right.
Because she would never say anything. She'd just sit in a room, and she'd sit in a chair, and it was no different than like wallpaper.
God,
because they just
shit in those days, man. That shit in those days was harsh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, see, that changes like the view to a hero as far as I'm concerned. It's like,
I guess I should have brought that poem. I didn't want to bring too many cheery poems, like I already did the dog one, and then I'll do a racer head about my my grandmother. So turn it into a real cheery affair.
But you see, that's what we do with that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you got to deal with it somehow, right? And the best way you can.
Well, I don't know if I'd agree with that, but yeah, you're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, they turn it into art at least, or try to express it in some way, right? Probably just to deal with it. But my family doesn't believe in that. They believe in the old school, the British just bottle it all up, don't deal with anything ever,
Right. Yeah. The only thing about my suburban upbringing was you on the other side of that, you add, make sure it looks perfect to the rest of the world. And, if you add that on the end, then you've done your job,
Yeah.
Just keep the lies with the good sheen,
Yep.
Yeah. See, we don't have to do that. That's one problem the working class don't have,
Well, I know.
Just let it all hang out. Just scream, and everybody knows your problems because you're bellowing at one another in the middle of the street, or at a funeral, or at a wedding, or at a wake. That's.
You're all screaming James Joyce at each other because you learned it in school.
Just obtuse passages from fucking Ulysses. Yeah, that's how we do. It's exactly what it was like. Yes.
That's one that always gets me about James Joyce too, is that he's, you know, the beloved son of Ireland now, and it's like, yeah, most of his writing life he was, you know, kicked out and books banned, and
yeah,
couldn't live in Ireland, and he was just a naughty boy, and now he's just a patron saint.
Most of any of that kind of like set of writers, you know, Sean O'Casey now. I mean, I went to the Abbey Theatre last time I was over, and we watched a production of The Plough and the Stars. When The Plough and the Stars was first performed there, our beloved Republican brothers tried to burn the theatre down. And now they're selling his book in the Sinn Féin bookshop. You know, that's the level of recuperation. And you have to remind yourself that this happens. And so whenever, you know, you're feeling bad about being blacklisted, or, you know, you're bumped from something because somebody just found out you're a fucking communist, you're like, well, you know, nobody tried to set fire to me. So. And in time, you know, you're going to be on the right side of history. It'll fine. You'll kind of rise above, you know.
Yep. Long enough.
You'll endure, you know.
I'm still hung up on the Sinn Féin bookstore part. That's what. Is that a real thing? Come on.
It's where I get most of my books and some of my T-shirts. Yeah, I know it's a real thing. Yeah.
How do I not know that?
My grandfather actually was tied to that. One of the ones that I looked up to. He had to leave Ireland under those type of circumstances. He was a stowaway on a cattle boat.
Oh my goodness.
To come over here when he was a teenager, and that's how we started over here on that side of the family. But he had to start a whole life over here alone. But I guess he was a stowaway because English soldiers had made him watch, and they stoned his brother to death when his brother was 6. And I guess he probably got revenge in some way that wasn't looked upon too fondly by the English, I guess. And then he got in trouble, so that his parents shuffled him off to Canada as a stowaway, and that's how we began over here. But yeah, we had our troubles too. And when I grew up, you know, my family was even telling me, "Oh no, those are the heroes with the with the ski masks on. Those are actually that's the Irish Army." And then I grew up in my own home. That's what they were telling me, right?
Yeah,
those are the good guys.
I mean, comparatively, yes. You know, comparatively, and this is the thing. I mean, you know, nobody's exactly king in that situation, particularly not, you know, in the 80s and 90s when we were growing up. But like, I mean, compared to an occupying force that, you know, just. I have feels about this. I have deep feels about English occupation of Ireland, and I get very excised about it still because it's still going on. And I mean, you know, our delightful Tory government in this country has just totally fucked Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement right in the gallbladder. So thank you for that, because they still don't give a shit about you. They really want to hold on to Northern Ireland. They're desperate to hold on to it, but they don't actually give a shit about any of the people that live there. It's amazing. It's like, well, we're not responsible. We'll just possess it. It's possessing it for the sake of possessing it, and it's tired and it's old, and
And that's the one education I had from my family, especially my grandparents, was you know, don't trust the English.
I think that's a good advice as somebody that's married an English person. That's a very good advice. I've lived here a long time now, and I still don't feel quite, you know, this is like slightly wary. I do like the fact that, like you.
I married a Scot, so we got the cousin. So, you know, she's her family was split. So they had her grandfather's a nationalist, and her grandmother had all the royal china.
Oh wow! Oh, the royal china.
So they'd have all kinds of fights. You know, you had the hardline Scottish nationalists out in the living room, and then she'd be getting out the English china. Nobody can touch this. Here's the Queen's stuff. You know.
It does something to you, right? I think as a child that you absorb all this, and you feel very strangely conflicted and very confused about the world.
Yep.
I think that treating one of those china plates as a frisbee will help to alleviate that early on.
Yep.
You know, I sit here and I listen to you guys talk, and I find myself somewhat jealous because I don't know my history that well, and B, it's certainly not as romantic and entertaining as what you guys are talking about. and all I know is I'm just the American guy who wears a kilt all the time. You know, that's all I know, and I still
This is all you know.
I still can't create a history. I just still can't do it. Don't be surprised, Ryan, if you hear me telling a tale on the podcast one day about my grandfather who was a stowaway on a cattle ship.
Learned history.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Collage, just steal it from bits from everybody and make a tapestry.
You know how that works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ryan, let's talk about the book and wrap things up, man. You want to read a couple rapid fire and then talk about the book and anything else you want to do before we close up?
I'll read a couple that aren't from the book, but then I'll talk about the book, I guess.
Okay.
Here's one I wrote recently. It's called "The Basement is Flooding. Someone Build an Ark." No need to be religious if you're wet. The basement is flooding. Someone build an ark. One cat and no rhino to speak of. No worry. The guidelines are rather lax these days, almost non-existent. First the spring thaw and now this. Naked feet submerged in sopping slap carpet. Old hairballs pasted down like found art installations that cost you your one good testicle to view. Some whiskered old docent with sardine breath pointing the way like a forgotten street sign in a municipal boneyard. Skin so wrinkled and worn that you think of Egyptian mummies, that musty curl of old papyrus spelunking into new lungs. No author has lived to adequately capture the modern drowning. Jules Verne would not go near the water without a submarine and a future first, which may make him smart, but that doesn't help the bark off the tree when you find yourself ankle deep in the wet stuff and looking to move your few remaining valuables to higher ground.
Nice.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's so good.
I'll read one called Pitchfork. Don't just lean there against the wall like a man out of work. 4 tines like lazy cigarette limbs on the long drag. And the bricks behind you are littered with old band posters that have gone through over 24 name changes and thrice as many incarnations. Everyone quitting and joining and quitting again, like an unfocused game of musical chairs. Hauling hawk shop gear around in the backs of rented panel vans, while this single pitchfork slow plays our shared desperate languish from stoop to hilt. Snapped in half 2/3 the way up the handle, so that I think of bulbous, lamplit strangers sitting down to break bread.
Yes, sir.
So cool.
And I guess the last one I'll read is called Public Defender. No one should defend the public. Have you seen that cheesy fondue mess? And here comes Mr. Briefcase with twice as much shoe polish as sense, wishing he still had his cheat sheet from passing the bar. And the judge looks like an inflamed prostate in robes, something the New Ager warlocks would wear to a sacred colonoscopy. Some angry little gremlin thing slamming his gavel down onto the spinning head of magnetic north. And I think of cadavers donated to science, as though the beakers were not enough. How H.H. Holmes polished up the skeletons of his victims and sold them back to the bone people. Something to scare the kiddies that can't stop looking under their beds for the monsters they will eventually become.
I like that one.
That's a fantastic king poem right there.
Thank you.
As the son of an attorney, like you really sucked me in at the beginning, and then I was somewhat gratified by the fact it didn't stay on the attorney.
Yeah.
Nice piece, man. Nice.
Thank you.
So we know the book's on Amazon, and I'll post a link for that. Any other projects that you're involved in right this minute that we should be aware of, or any other books that you need to get rid of excess inventory or anything like that?
There are projects. They're not out yet. Doing one with I don't know if you know Adrian Manning. Concrete Meat Press. So I have a chapbook coming out with him called Orphan Dancer. There's a book called Minotaur Snow, should be out soon with New York Quarterly Books.
Cool.
And
they're really a quality publication, aren't they? I really like their stuff.
they do really good work. And also doing an animated book with a super talented Swedish artist, Jan Carlson.